But so I really can you hear me okay? Oh, I hope that yeah. So we can start with say thank you for being here. Let me talk to you a little bit. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about birds. I was teaching my animal sheep work the other day. They were from Scranton. How excited I was to be able to come to because they know how much I want to talk about birds. We start my classes at the beginning of semester saying, apologize, you're going to get a ton of bird branches. And I also want to say, I'm really jealous how to know. A lot of art set, but what a neat building. So, Mayday, we're here today. A colleague of mine, and of course, I'm at the University of Scranton. Our banding station amounts to a couple of camp chairs, a couple of camp tables. We try to site in the area in Lackawanna State Park. And every once in a while, the park gets a report saying they think there's something resonating back. So we've been banding birds, and I'll talk a little bit. I have a lot of different interests. Back at work, collaboration with Jeff Mueller, history. And some a lot of work in Michigan as well. But today I'm going to talk about some of the things that we're doing in Northeastern Pennsylvania. So I started at the University of Scranton I can't believe how long ago it's been. In the fall of 2003, and then we got to see the law in the fall of 2004. So I started banding in 2000, in spring 2000. And we banded every spring migration, with the exception, of course, of the COVID year, which is like 15 years of banded data is not 19. We'll be our 19th year. So every year, say COVID, since 2004, in the springtime, and about 2/3 of those years in the fall too. Which means it's a lot of, so I get my hands on a lot of birds, and I really enjoy that. But what I want to talk a little bit about is a little bit about like I said, some of the work that we're doing. We study avian migration. Well, so Meg started. We had this meeting, and she comes from a background of feral behavior, so she can see playful behavior and we met. And I said, "You're not doing that here." So I said, "I love feral behavior, but we're doing migration learning." And she agreed. And so she and I have been working all of these years together. So everything that I'm presenting is a consequence of what both of us, as well as a number of different undergraduate students from NC Scranton, University of Scranton, as well as local school called Keystone College. We don't have a grad program at the University of Scranton, at least in the biology department. So anyway, what I'm interested in, and Jeff probably recognizes some of this, this goes back to our advisor, both shared at the University of Mississippi, Southwood College. So I'm interested in migration and migration ecology of especially landbirds, but more specifically, stopping, stopover, what birds are doing on stopover. I'm sure that most all of you know what happens. Right? So take a bird like one of these male American red star, it's young male American red star, it's female, it might have been winter somewhere in this area, came back to northeastern Pennsylvania, and debris, and then turning around and going south again. And of course, these birds aren't making these migratory flights in a non-stop fashion, so they'll take off just after dusk, flying in still the appropriate direction north, of course, if we're talking about spring migration. And they'll move if the weather's good, they'll move to maybe midnight, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they'll set down in habitat. We in the fields referred to as the stopping. So what these birds are doing is they're stopping at what we call these stopover sites. So here's just a general definition that we could put on a stopover site. It's a general place where a bird pauses between migratory flights. So what I'm interested in is what's going on when they're staying at, that's a big interest of mine. There's a couple of other interests I'll talk about that one. What's going on when they're in these stopovers? And I probably are aware, so when these birds are migrating, well, the species we're especially interested in are migrating at night. Of course, they're not feeding at night. they think of lots of migration with the deposit previous. So high quality site is going to permit a bird to gain mass, presumably fat, at a high rate so that they can subsequently use that to fuel a nice migration. We can use that, and I'll show you some of our results to give us an idea about quality of stopovers. If a bird is in a high quality stopover site where it has maybe few potential predators, lots of it's going to maximize its fat position. And of course, that's going to be reflected in mass change. So what I'm getting at is that we can let the birds tell us a little bit about habitat quality and of course conservation. So that's what we're interested in doing. We're interested in looking at the effects of abiotic and non-living stuff and the living stuff as it relates to how these birds are using these habitats. And that's basically what we've been doing for all of these years. When I think about, I guess, my research program or our research program, this sums up these non-mutually exclusive bulleted points, kind of sums up, right? So we can sum up my program, but I also Meg has we're also interested in ecophysiology and some of those kinds of things. So we do take some blood samples, but I don't think I'll have time to talk about this. But if you think about it, what I'm really interested in, especially in recent years, is what's going on during stopover, especially as it relates to the use of and fitness consequences, use and fitness consequences of using stopping over habitats dominated by non-native vegetation. And our study sites in northeastern Pennsylvania are absolutely dominated by non-native honeysuckle and barberry as well as your Asian buckthorn. So a little bit about that, and I'll show you some results as it relates to that. And then next up, I'm really interested in things that impact migratory timing. So we look at factors like age and sex, intrinsic factors, perhaps individual condition as it relates to when birds get to our destination. We have our site, we have, like say, catbirds that are arriving at our site and they get breed, but we also have catbirds and other species individuals, of course, use the site. It's not the stopover to continue on the northern, continue to further to the north. So I'm interested in that, and I've really, in recent years, in the last few years, we've really been looking at a lot about weather and climate because now we have a data set sufficient for us to actually ask questions, and we see evidence of climate change in migratory time. And I cannot show you some evidence that we do. And this is what I did a big chunk of my PhD on that. And I'm not so it's not so easy for me to find because I'm the bird bander, as well as it's hard to ban birds and then go look for nests and then go teach classes. I haven't time to do that. So, but I'm really interested in linkages. Sometimes these are called carrier. So we are, like I said, over here somewhere would be Michigan. We've done a lot of work in Michigan, but what I'm talking about today is the stuff we've been doing in and around Lackawanna State Park, which is in Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania. Standard stuff, you guys all know this, banning birds. What do? We catch them in mist nets. We take basic morphological measures for some species. We might pull feathers because I have some students that are interested. Of course, I'm interested in this too. We look at feathers. We've got some work going on in the lab with feather growth rates for catbirds. We have some work going on in the lab with feather coloration with different species like catbirds, some other species where we'll sample, pull some feathers from these bring them into catbirds, bring the feathers into the lab, do some analysis on. And then Meg, she's really interested in the blood sampling, immunology. And we're also at the University of Scranton, who recently was hired in. She's a plant geneticist, but she can do DNA work on birds. So I put a lab on it and freak out. So I can't do that. So we will collect blood samples. So one of the things we've been able to do in recent years is sex captures that we catch during migration, which is pretty cool. Okay, and then of course, we have to do some survey work and so on. So now let me just give you some of the results of what we've been working on over the years, just a little bit. This first study is a result of a real unfortunate natural experiment that occurred where in 2007, our study site was infested with a non-native white bird bee. This is a native viburnum shrub. So previous to 2007, here's just a quick survey. You can see what the study site looked like in 2007 or 2015. Honeysuckle, multiple species of honeysuckle, non-native, native dog species, and then viburnum versus 2007. Right when beetle infested, we sampled just before we got them back like this. And then this is after. Going back and visited these sites in 2013, you can see there is essentially no living viburnum left. So viburnum was a native shrub species. So where our nests are in a shrub. And you can see, not surprisingly, there's a significant increase in the snag densities dead viburnum cells. So this was a natural experiment, unfortunately. So that gave me an opportunity. I had enough samples, some sampling years, seasons in the spring, before and after, and this is just some of the information that we pulled on. So before and after, capture rates decline, number of species decline, and this is, I think this is really important. We know, I mentioned before, that birds gain mass in high quality habitat. That's where they're adding fat stores, and as a consequence, we can use birds to tell us a little bit about habitat quality. 7 to 9 species, these are species for which we had sufficient seed sizes. 7 to 9 before viburnum beetle took out native viburnums, gaining mass after none. So that's not surprising, given that we also have demonstrated, as well as other people, like native species tend to have more bugs than people. So you have one bit of habitat use as it relates to spraying. Here is some results for some fall habitat use. Now, I didn't have sufficient fall season to do before and after viburnum beetle precursor. But so this is after viburnum. And this is busy figure, or I'm sorry, table. But the only thing I want to point out here is of all of these species we looked at again during fall migration, thinking about mass gain as an indicator, or mass change as an indicator of habitat quality. After this beetle infestation in the fall, only 2 species, this is the p-value, so only 2 of these species demonstrated significant changes in mass. One of those species, common yellow throat. And that one, and it turns out when I did an interaction effect, it's actually the females that were losing mass. The males were maintaining mass. So looking at this graph, this will kind of give you an indication. Minutes since sunrise. So if a bird starts out, maybe it just lands in a habitat. Gets awake in the morning and starts to forage. And as it forages throughout the course of the day, there's lots of food in that habitat bird in mass because it's adding. Conversely, if it's not gaining mass, maybe it maintains itself, or if it's really poor habitat, it loses minutes. So this is so minutes since sunrise is just exactly that. And you can see that I didn't have enough. Believe it or not, I didn't have enough red stars to differentiate males from females. These old birds versus young birds. But you can still the birds gaining mass, the younger birds not such a high rate. So there's something about the habitat that seems to be good for the American red star, but not for any of these other species. That's our fall habitat use. The arrival timing, this goes to the linkages thing. This is some stuff that we recently published. And this is really interesting to me as well. You see, in a real quick way of showing you this, what we did, here's our study sleep Northeast Pennsylvania. We downloaded weather data, specification for this area. This is different from something I can talk about if you wanted to, but I don't have time. And we related each of these data points here represents the average temperature for given May, and of course these are each of these would be years. Average temperature in May. This is the average arrival date for catbirds. Average temperature in May, average arrival date. Orbital day is the number of days since January 1st. So this is telling us that there's an association between temperatures experienced en route and this is going fast. I'm not going fast enough. There's timing relationships here. What I'm getting at is what's going on here is associated with what we're getting and what we're seeing up here. The other thing that I think is really interesting is I also looked at which So this graphic is basically showing you ESO effects in the prior January and March, presumably when these birds were on the wintering grounds, right? ESO, El Nino Southern Oscillation. I don't have enough time to get to details right about this later. But what this is getting at is timing of arrival at our site in northeastern Pennsylvania was associated with what things that were going on the wintering grounds. And this is another. This is something that is actually, we just submitted this long-term data set. I can finally begin to ask questions about, is there evidence? Can we see evidence of climate change? So this is just some analysis based on temperature data from Wilkes-Barre Scranton Airport. In May and of course April. This is when the birds are migrating, and right now moving through our site. No temperature change over the period to the time we started banning birds here since 2020. We do see increased precipitation. Even so, catbirds and common yellowthroats, and these are species I use because these are species that I have good sample sizes across all the years of this study. Catbirds are advanced their arrival in our cities from 6.1 days per decade and about 2.6 days per decade for common. So our evidence here suggests, we're not really seeing temperature changes, but these are migratory birds. This is being what's going on before they get to our site. And then I don't know how much time I have left. The last thing I wanted to point out is this. We just started doing some solid owl work in park. This goes back to the fact that we actually came down here. My wife and I, we came down here, and Allison showed us their setup. We saw a bird in the hand, a full one, and Beth said, "Come on, next to catch solid owls for Christmas." So that's what we did. So we put some nets out in Lackawanna State Park. Nobody knew anything if they were there. And it turns out it was catching little bugs. And so we did this as a hobby for a little while. And then some grad student from Binghamton, now she's at Bloomberg, now she's at Binghamton, came in and did her master's work on collected data at our site. It's just a summary of the data, so you can get into it. I know I'm running out of time. We were trying to see if we could track. We actually were using not only a mail more broadcasting mail calls, soliciting calls. So we're also see if we could attract mail. I guess it seems that we might be able to. We have to get out. We have the beginning work. These unknown sexes. But the long and short of it is, yes, they're in the park, and yes, they're using the park. And recently, we caught a fledgling spring migration. We opened the nets. There he is. There he is. Yeah, we didn't. I can't. We didn't. We didn't have his hanging wire. We didn't get to measure the city discern whether it was a murder. Sorry, feeding over mail. And we have some visualizations and some other fledglings in the park. So what we have here is we've got solid owls that are seemingly breeding in and around Lackawanna State Park in this habitat, which is a mixed kind of deciduous habitat, which is kind of unexpected. So, and I think I probably will stop now. The last thing I'm working on, this is an analysis I was actually doing yesterday. Birds at our site are getting bigger over the years. This is not uncommon. They found this out. They found this at Manomet. That tails are getting longer, wings are getting longer. I think a lot of what's happening is those elements are getting longer. Body size is getting smaller. Our catbirds and our common yellowthroats and some other species that I'm looking at right now, it seems like the body size is actually being bigger. So anyway, climate change. So with that, 30 seconds. Okay, done.
So lunchtime, I'm sitting next to Marge, and she said, "What bird are you working on?" And I said, "Saltmarsh sparrows." And she said, "Is it going to be a depressing talk?" We said the website used to be ssri.org. Was that making anybody SSRI? Selective Search on the vendors. So Prozac at that time, they had a question. So I talked to the student president. We had to change our website. Change our website because we're getting too many requests for Prozac. So remarkable bird, the Saltmarsh sparrow, has a lot of unique features. Contrary to what it looks like, it doesn't actually record any information. But this species, with its environment, as birds and environments do, it's an obligate Saltmarsh resident, so it cannot live anywhere else. It's totally dependent on a high density of arthropods in the summer and a high density of seeds in the fall. It's a monomorphic species, so you can't determine the sex by looking, but you can by behavior, and when you've already color banded them, you can just by looking at binoculars. So our code that we use is we use blue on the right for males generally. However, if we gather them in a nest, we put a purple band. So would you know if this were a male and female by just looking at the aluminum band on the right? You wouldn't, because this band doesn't nest in, and you can't determine sex with a nesting, right? But there's another tip for determining the sex of the bird in the essence.
Carrying nothing.
It's carrying food, right? So, and the females to all of the so the males have been emancipated from any paternal congregation, except for sperm transfer. This is my co-author. He started working with us when he was 16, and now he's 20. And we work in this habitat. And those the saltmarshes, they're notoriously windy. So that's a characteristic that's helpful with convection. We're talking about how changes in the species in the morphology may be adaptive to increasing temperature. And convection by wind is a very handy way of liberating water and heat. So with further regulation, we're interested to know whether or not this bird can adapt to living in a windy environment that's notoriously absent for any shade, that's wide open, and another feature of Saltmarsh is that there's fresh water and everything. So when your dog gets hot, what does it do? Yes, some birds will pant, but in this habitat, if you pant, you'll lose too much fresh water. So that's not an option. So one option that we've been seeing, well, why not increase build surface area as a way to dissipate heat? So this study, we measured not just build surface area, but we also looked at wing chord and tarsus. This was the first 5 years of the 6 years of data. And what we found was we had an extraordinary rate of success, around 30.something%, which is most unusual compared to other salt marshes from Virginia to Maine. However, about 84% of our birds that's flooded, and about 26% were depredated. So these are the main threats to this species, which is currently described as threatened but not officially endangered. The irony here, when this bird becomes designated as officially endangered, then there's much less we can do to intervene, just because of the bureaucracy of dealing with getting permits. And so I've scrambled this year to request to get permits. And one of the permits I'm waiting was supposed to be ready by the time this conference started was whether or not I could give permission to literally lift nests up above the flooding threshold. So we know in this 35-acre habitat in Warren, North Carolina, we know exactly which are vulnerable to flooding. And what we propose to do is very low budget science. We get a big out of the nest, let it for 30 inches, and then put some turf underneath it and maybe some sand to support it and see whether we can bring it the threshold. So in scientific funding, this is called a Hail Mary pass. So this is the main threat. This bird is often referred to as the canary in the coal mine for global warming, and you can see why. Now, you think you're better off putting it in, or are you better off being nesting twice a month when the tidal floods? What would you be your guess? Yeah, you're better off being an egg. So it's all about timing because the eggs can actually tolerate hours of being in cold water. And you don't see it in this nest, but initially all the nests have a dome that's woven over it of pigments. And so as the eggs come up, they hit the canopy and they drop back down by the time they seeds. So you're better off, so it's all about timing being an egg than you are being a nestling. And nestlings must be at least 8 inches tall. And they must have vegetation like EBBA to crawl up into. So it's quite predictable which nest we're going to lose according to the timing. That's when we get out that SSRIs that goes in. This is a day old nestling, bigger than bears. But if it's flooded, if this nest is flooded out, he won't make it, but in 2 days he will. So one of the articles is actually that to move nestlings into the nests that are at higher elevation. But chances are they're not going to accept that. But the way one of the arguments that I made with U.S. Fish and Wildlife was, we're on the Titanic, guys. The icebergs are there, and we know we have to turn soon. We have to turn. It's already probably too late, but till we wait till we hit the iceberg and then say, oh yeah, go ahead and lift those nests, that's okay. Or go ahead and try and see whether another female will accept this nestling. We can't really afford to wait, but the Titanic argument hasn't swung yet. So there's a brilliant study by Jennifer Walsh et al. That looked at identical species to be a swamp sparrow in the upper left. This swamp sparrow lives in the upland habitat, and its conspecific lives in the Saltmarsh. The same is true for three species. The Saltmarsh sparrow, the Spanish sparrow, same sparrow. So what she found was the conspecifics bill size is always larger in the Saltmarsh residence. So that kind of goes to our thesis that increase in surface area would help dissipate heat, right? Salt columns obviously is going to be better in Saltmarsh residence. And this graphic, I got by the editors, is the proof. This actually should be darker. So these birds, is this counterintuitive? Saltmarsh residents are darker than their non-specific Saltmarsh. Is this expression?
No.
It is expression, yeah. It's risky, but nonetheless, it's more protected. So bill size is the iconic structure in birds, going back to Darwin's time. And when Darwin visited the different islands in the Galapagos, he noticed that bill size varied with island and actually with habitat. And with habitat was food source. And this is at 1831. Fast forward to 1970, 80, and 90, and Peter and Rosemary Scranton, Princeton, they looked much more there are selective forces acting on the morphology of bird, and those selective forces, according to Darwin, were geography and also food source. Grants took it much farther, and they actually watched evolution happen generation by generation. When they did a very rainy season in the Gulf Coast, it changed the food source, and the birds adapted those. For example, when the ecological factors were such that there were larger seeds only available, only the birds with the larger bill survived. So it was a selection event, and they actually showed that evolution happens. It can happen actually within minutes. So so the scale has changed dramatically over 160 years. Now, fast forward to today, starting around 2010, a group of people from University of Connecticut and the Smithsonian and University of Maine, they looked at bills in a different way and said that rather than just exclusively thinking of them as being adapted for foraging, let's look and see what they play in heat dissipation. So when you're measuring birds in Japan station, when you're measuring Cailin, how are you measuring it? Are you measuring it from where the feathers basically are meeting the bill, basically roughly to the end of the mandible? That's roughly what we're doing, right? What are some tremendous variability. It depends a lot on the feathering, doesn't it? And if you were to do an intra-rater reliability on combing measurements, it would be quite low. And if you were to try inter-rater reliability, a couple of different people doing it, you find there's tremendous variability if you measure combing that way. So what they suggested, and others suggested, was to actually take this and there is the distal end of the nail is that the distal end is the part as far as the distal end here, caliper here, and caliper at the end of the upper mandible measure. And this is called the velocity, and it's much more reproducible. So it's a better measurement to take. So these are the current people who are working on this question. And they crafted their question around Allen's rule, which you may know is animals adapted to cold climates have shorter and thicker appendages than animals adapted to warmer climates. And here you can see a new corollary. This is the best example I could find. And you know when you're slides and you get 31 centimeters, you make them taller and skinnier, right? Okay, I'll make these monthly more and skinnier by manipulating the solids. That's what they're doing. They're adapted to extremely warm weather that then and the surface area was huge and dissipated heat versus the Inuit. So you see this example not just in birds, but across the mammals and other species. So the modern corollary to Allen's rule is this one. In freshwater limited environments, bill surface areas increase with temperature. So this is background literature review that I did and said, we got to test the state streams. So how would you go about that? Well, what supports this view is some infrared imaging that's done with Rock University in Canada and with the Smithsonian. And what they found was they could actually measure and quantify heat loss through the bill. And what else do you notice in this slide that I missed the first time I saw this? What's another organ or body part that potentially vasodilates and allows the body to get rid of heat? The tarsus, right? I missed that the first time too. I'll tell you why that's caused. So, getting to our research question, we had these two questions. Are there differences in the morphology over time? And are there differences related to temperature change? The first question is much easier to answer than the second. So I took my 17-year-old assistant, we went out to Harvard, to the Museum of Comparative Zoology, and we looked at samples from over 100 years ago, and we took identical measurements to the measurements we're taking now. We measured wing chord, which is the easiest and the most reproducible. Tarsus, and velocity, so you see it's the distal end of the nares to the end of the mandible. We took the height and the width. And we plug these values into this formula. That's surface area. So in 2022, this is all the preliminary data because I spent this last week at 6 different museums. So I have a whole, I tripled my family side. I was at the museum yesterday. In 2022, this is what we found, except for males having larger wing chords, which is something that we all knew anyway. There is no difference in morphology. However, when the females said over time, like looking at 100-year-old birds versus modern birds, the females showed no changes in this preliminary. And this is the only wonky slide I have. I think. Okay, so just to walk you through this, this green line represents mean maximum temperature for 100 years. Okay, for the females, we found there's no significant difference in the surface area of wing chord or tarsus. We did find that modern males had significantly longer tarsi, which is not what we were expecting. And here's what we didn't expect and didn't want to find. The gills of males are actually small. And I suspect this because of small sample size and this will all wash off. This is just a preliminary work. So the males had the surface area was the same, but the tarsus was significantly bigger. Okay. So in discussion, we found that there were differences, but they weren't in the direction we thought, and where we thought. The harder question is always related to temperature change. And we'll speed up on this and say it depends on your perspective. There are alternative hypotheses for what might drive changes in morphology, including dense population density and sexual selection. Okay. So our future work, I just want to say quickly. So you see the background of this slide. Yes, right. So our future work has to do with the fact that we put up a bunch of trail cameras and over the nest, and what we found much more surprising. Our predators were raccoons and right and rats. Turns out that Bambi is our major predator for these schools. So our future work has to do with what we're going to do to keep Bambi out of our nest. Questions, comments?
Well, but then for whatever, is there any theory that because the smart is significantly larger than those would require?
That's very logical. Yeah. When I was presenting this to you, someone said, "Oh, I can picture this. I can picture a full on fair, you know, waste as much as many."
Right.
That's logical.
Thank you very much.
Or
Yeah,
My next speaker is Kean Stewart, staff ornithologist from their Maine Society, and he'll be talking about other night prevalence birds and southeast and Delaware. The still in the middle of the southern mites are fascinating. They are.
that's what I'm here to convince you. Thanks for having me. Apologies for the goofy phone accent. So yeah, so obviously a lot of you friends, birds, you'll notice all these little dots on the wing. You may know what are all those little dots. Sometimes the birds just have a couple of little dots. Sometimes they have a whole bunch of little dots. And of course these are mates. And the mates are tiny little arthropods, okay, so 0.5 millimeter long, 8-legged. Well, again, the thing about them is they spend their entire life on the bird. Okay, if they fell off a bird, they'll probably die. And we think they're probably transmitted to birds when they're in the nest. Okay, so the parents are sitting on them in the nest for a long period of time, so the mates are crawling the parent feathers to the young. Also possible that in a very social species, that's feeding like together at a bird feeding station or something like that, as they're bumping against each other, they're going like that. And they're being studied intermittently. Mixed bag of results. Some people have found them to have very negative effects on their host. So birds with lots of feather mates on visible condition and find no difference or something. Generally, they are considered mostly commensurate, so they're just looking beyond the birds. They came on the groundbreaking study, I should say, came out in 2018. You've never seen this. It's in molecular ecology, so it's available to the public. 2018, and what it was the elements in the microscopes trying to figure out what was in their salts, which is amazing, considering they're only 0.5 millimeter across. And mainly, the different contents using DNA barcoding, not just something that's going to revolutionize what we know about things. So it's the elements split. See one in the found by bacteria or possibly Israeli gland organs, so let's have those glands, it's green, these things for all the feathers, it's protect their feathers, keep them in good shape. You do know that a lot of bacteria out there that are feather degrading, and you only think this is what causes a lot of feathers to become abraded. So maybe that the plants actually lead to the actually holding them like a skinny. Well, by one of our working friends, he comes to our bounding station, works at the University of Delaware microscopy unit. So if you're able to get some nice skin designation on the modeler, you want to see So anyway, it's notes, so you see that dark orange, they're fully slow times. The younger one, the third one, so that's sort of the catchment easy with a series of notes, such as what's in the dark, forward up, the young two feeds, sit all here, and the cool feeds, these things are in, say, it's not really okay. This one thing through, so you just want to that, so that's yeah, it's really hard. One thing else, right? Well, I kind of always had sort of an eye for the sort of quirks of natural history, if you like, so that eggs on that. And what I can do, anyway, so rules of the past, so that when the birds fly, just so also she also got an electron microscope maybe, but an egg. And so this is a female, as you can tell by these approach to vaccines or. And then you just need to, so their heads look like. Anyhow, last one green. So you want a small banding station, or you just hold 8 minutes at Bucktown. Yeah, it's they're going to keep it below. Pretty open. It's just lots of months. And the kind of banding station, do a lot of educational programs, a lot of bird outreach, and native plant painters, so very interested. And having kids, especially away from their devices, getting off the screens, getting outside, splashing in creeks, catching butterflies, looking at birds, bird boxes, and all this sort of stuff. So as I'm standing, I thought I may as well start collecting data on these mates. One of the things I thought may have some variation between within species. Also just build morphology, so pointiness, it's like the word actually got a very positive, like numerous, maybe it's very easy for a pretty off piece. Whereas you get sort of like a bigger clunky of the root, like bodies, it's very hard to take off. These tiny little very really just like big beyond. Also seasonality. So because the mites we think are mostly transferred in the nest, now reproductions lately got comes out because they're one of them perhaps going to the nestlings. And also I thought, well, maybe age. Maybe younger, like mites, haven't figured out how to keep them off that kind of thing. Sitting in the nest for a long period of time, you've got males and females sitting on top of them, so maybe the young birds are more like mites. And the data collection is very simple. So I've been doing it for 4 years now. And most of the time, it's easy to bring them on one side of the bird. And so you can show the birds really staying up. White, with the naked eye. Sometimes you wear clothes, and so I just do it times in the main combination and secondaries. I do a scale of 0 to 3, so 0 means no mates, I'm not that. 3 would be this one, that's heavy infestation. These 2s, these 1s, an assistant, and I just say something like, okay, mates 1, P 3 to 8, mates 2 on the mates, something like that. So it's a straightforward, simple thing. So results of the data from the 50 species and comments. Okay, so pretty much all of the birds I've had mates, I usually find them on very high countries. Okay, maybe P7 through 9, kind of in our secondaries. I don't know if that's because maybe that's when the bird's folding its wing, they're the closest parts to its body. The bird got to be easily very prone to drying out, to really very close to the body, people desiccating. Of course, 3 species I've just called a couple of, and it's hard to sort of extrapolate. Just a handful of birds. Supermarket lost 5 species, there are more than 5 limits of being done, so 33 species. Between species results, so stage of birds with mate results from 0 to 100%. So the flying ones, the ones with lots of mates, so all the house finches I examined have fellow mates, same with chromosomes, most of the brown-headed cowbirds, and chicken sparrows, so very high fellow mates, and most species were distinguished with the mixed woods of birds. Well, rains, surprisingly, so only 2 of 30 Carolina rains had fellow mates, and on 29 house rains had fellow mates. interesting one here. So Ruby Crown King shows a beautiful clean wing up there. Well, showing it's on the nice on the bottom. Flag picture, so we have very few flag catchers, we're going to flag catchers of being our site. Flag catchers were fun. We thought, well, instead of just doing it on a per species level, all I would say brushes, highest percentage of brushes that you capture benefits, it's 75% brushes, robins, wood brushes, stuff. Brushes are pretty mighty birds, swallows and blackbirds. Then goes down more, not many, kinglets, wrens, and blackbirds, which is a lot of them. No obvious patterns there, you know, when I was thinking of my bill size idea, I was thinking that things like walnuts, like fine pointy birds, wouldn't have very many families, of course they do. Of course, they do families. So, see how obviously interesting. Well, the diets did the families trying to smooth type. So animal managed or early migration birds, those common great swordfish to lakes, sometimes we block those up again towards the end. This of course probably just reflects the composition of the birds you're catching, because this time your spring migrants, then settling down your breeding birds, and then down here you get influx of northern sparrows, which are nice. A lot of sparrows, right? So it's not so strong at the end of the season, but maybe that's giving only the only species where where you know reasonable comparison of such evidence is equal. Didn't find any strong evidence that the hatchier birds consistently had more mates than hatchier birds. Going up to the land, he said, yeah, I don't know Scranton, which are sort of more age migrants than hatchier birds have their families. You may think, well, maybe what's happening is that the English are seeing a lot of things for locally, but I'm taking the families with them. Because the families probably figured this out. Because if the feathermate's on the bird, the feather's up to the cage, that's still in the end, it's still got a families. Okay, because it couldn't survive, just for the need. Comes out, you know, you see how I'm sure, you know, between a couple of children knots. The people who use experiments, so if you see new feather from me, these old feathers, or so that is not the result. The feathermates can seize this, so you'll move from those feathers to these feathers. Clever. As an additional measure, I then looked at total mate score, because that sort of comes out of this sequence, it's nice for horses between species. Of course, it means that because it's just, you know, yes or no, or heard that just saying, putting feathermates on one, it's wrapped the number with the pots. So what the total mate score was, remember I was doing the swap each feather, scale 0 to 3, it summed all the feather mate score from all main frames and main secondaries. So in other words, if 9 of your feathers had feather mate score 1, you would have score 9, all of 9 has feather mate score 3. So you've now got a feather mate score of 27. So the potential range is 0 to 54, the high feather found. The captains with lots of feathermates on its wings, and lots of feather mates. Look at the total score, came to some similar results. So Bradford had high total mate scores, most things of the game have total mate scores as with chipping styles. What this means is a lot of them have mates, and have mates have a lot of them as well. Smaller ones, smaller emerge, toes. Don't have that many, not that many towies head mates, but the ones that had them had a lot. Same with their other birds, not so many had them, the ones that had them had a lot. So if you look at the seasonality of total mate score, it just reflects what I'm saying about their mates to be tuned to the culture of their hosts. So at the time of year, I found most mates have actually started breeding system, sort of to late season like that. So in summary, over the top, right hand multi-feathermates, so the very common things, most common numerous during spring, at least in late summer. Like these patterns that I did pick out about what kind of birds were more likely to have been one of those. Obviously, some jumped up and like the range would be a surprise when they didn't have any time. So please studious. So part of my reason for being here, and just to talk about my result, trying to get more people to also take their own data on this. Because these are very common. Seeing plenty of birds with feather mates in December, so even if you do winter banding study, there's a good chance of collecting this data. Work really well last year, and actually, maybe like it's good markets, maybe your banding station, I'm looking for their own. You can count the birds, collect the measurement data, and then pass it on to them. They can take some the tantalizing ones, because I was always concerned by birds you don't catch them. So see a lot of birds in the hard enough. So the one I caught two, I think chasing which something going from that. But interestingly, all of those on those adult cedar wetlands, all aiding their fellows and mates. So I don't know if this is a general species wide pattern. In part of my motivation for showing some of the fairly small fossils with reverse slow common. So, birds. You got 7 other birds a week. What's it? Large numbers of trees. We have lots for these things to find out whether I find out like a local species, local order, whether they're species specific traits. And so we have a lot of data on grounds from multiple species, there are more species traits. And we see the part things like phylogenetic patterns, ecological patterns, and also once they are all the boundary studies that I've read pretty much, and now you're all on the same types of plants, which is passerines, mostly woodland grass and passerines. We know almost nothing about boundary in all of these. We call things some of these rooms in boundary parts. People with this rule of boundary, solar vowels and with some these kind of hardness, it's the bad quick things to look at when you use that. I just think they're really cool things. So yet these are some of the family yellow breasted chaps, which are really interesting appearance. The thing about these is these are on the upper side. So this year I'm going to be doing a bit more on the fellow mates and also be trying to get some better images. This is a picture of people going to a digital camera with a marking maze. See, yes, thanks, yeah, this is a leaves. And you can look at reflect data on the mites themselves breeding. Just the logic being, if you find a high portion of eggs, it means that's the time of the year the mites are breeding. And if you don't find any eggs, that's when that is breeding. You can actually buy microscopes now where they have reflection when you put an SLR on the body right into the microscope. So you can take some bigger photographs and do some yes. So I hope I've still made at least one person. No, okay, thank you.
Patents is your government words.
Right. Well, I haven't published it, so it is out there. I mean, my thinking was that everybody could just follow the same scale, because it's fiction batting conference, but even like the generics of square feet of trying out, maybe they will never really better. So it's like a very salty hard. Or maybe real real stuff where I'm missing very sort of punching and not necessarily no, I don't see any physical damage on the bird. It's not like feather lace where you see them chewing holes in the birds. My feeling is it's one of those things where like really good managers and they even help them when you reach a point where you've got so many of them might become up. Especially if you're a mine, you've got a really fluid with these little banks using it hard and flying on.
You love life from the time of month. The chance of life on the primary of the word different with the different mice on the secondary. We can tell the difference when they're shaped differently. The mice on the primaries are longer and thinner, and the ones on the secondaries are rounder. Probably has to be just like, airflow. So they are, I told you they're fast, and they're not jaws on the general. Okay. Speaker is Zoe Warner, who is a PhD student, Grassland bird, on Grassland bird and full of those conservation talks, and that's stable Grassland bird recovery. Tree and flowering.
So, there's a bit of a change from what we talked about, more research and action and conservation action. So this is the Grassland Bird Collaboration. It's a program of Willistown Conservation Trust. And I just kind of wanted to walk you through how we've been able to use banding and tagging data to kind of build this program. So as we all know, grassland birds are in trouble, and they're actually the group of land bird species that are in the greatest. So 2/3 of grassland birds have experienced population declines, and actually 1/4 of those are tipping point species, which means that they've lost 50% of their population in the last 50 years, and they're on track to lose another 50% in the next 50 years unless we can reverse this trend. And bobolinks are one of those species. So we can see the precipitous declines in that graph, and we don't want to see those numbers. So that's the bad news, but there's good news. These losses can be reversed. And so what we're doing is working through voluntary partnerships with farmers and landowners and other conservation organizations to address these issues locally so that we can help these birds before they're considered threatened in this area. So just kind of walk you through the evolution of this project. I did my dissertation research on grassland birds, and I used bird survey data and landscape measurements to predict where we might find these birds in the greater Doe Run area, which is about 30 minutes southwest of here. And so when I mapped my data, I found sort of a hot spot emerged in that area. So it's important to know where these birds are, but if you're not managing for the birds, then it doesn't do that much. So when I finished my PhD, I joined with Willistown, and we started looking at the timing of breeding to look at what are the safe mow dates, because that's really one of the greatest threats to these birds is they're actually able to use non-native grasses. They don't mind the full season hay fields, but the problem is if the mowers are coming in when they're breeding, then we're just disrupting this next generation of birds. So we did that in 2020, and then in 2021, we added in nanotag data. So we were looking at local movement, and also we joined with researchers in Vermont and Maine to look at regional patterns. So that meant tagging these little buggers. And I say that with all due respect, but they did toy with us, as you can see. They love to sit on the trammers and watch us as we desperately try to get them in the net. But we did prevail. And so our protocol involved, we took blood samples, we did color banding, and then of course, we deployed 20 nanotags, 8 females and 12 males. And there are so many people in this room that have been part of this project. It's good to name them all, but this has definitely been a collaborative effort among the Willistown program, members of the program. So we bagged them, and fleeced them, and got a much for hysterics. So when that was finished, we wanted to we began nest searching, and the idea wasn't to do an exhaustive nest search, but it was more to think about where are the nestlings in the stage of development, so that we could set safe mow dates for the birds. So around the first week of June, we found that they were usually 4 to 5 days old. We found a later nest on June 16th. So thinking about that, they're in the nest for about 10 to 11 days after they hatch.
And then they're walking around for a little more than a week after that. And so during that period, they're very vulnerable to any kind of disturbance in the field. So based on what we found, we realized that July 1st would be a safe time to get the majority of the birds off the nests and to join the adults. And one of the rewards for being able to find these tiny little puffs of grass that are under the thatched hay is that we were able to band these little babies and color banded them, and you just can't be free to bother. So in the meantime, we had set up sensor gnomes at the three banding areas, and we were looking at local movement. So we found that the majority of the birds were regularly detected among the three fields. So what that meant to us was that these birds don't see the boundaries that we humans see. So the landscape is basically connected for them, and it provides collectively, the different locations provide for their needs. So they may be nesting in one field, but they're foraging in another, and they're moving seamlessly among those fields. Excuse me. So, this then helps us to think about management. When we want to think about how we're going to manage for these birds, we need to think about them using these different field sites. And then we kind of took a step back and we looked at the regional picture. So we actually had some birds that were leaving during breeding, going up north and having short forays and then coming back down. One of the really big things that we found was that the Delmarva Peninsula was an important stopover ground. We were talking about stopover grounds earlier. And so half of our birds were found in the Delmarva Peninsula, and not only were our birds found there, but the birds that were tagged in Vermont and Maine were also found there. So we think about then how do you manage for the complete life cycle of the bird? So if this is an important stopover ground, what are we doing to provide for these birds during that important time? So that was 2021. And then as the pings started to slow down and the birds had gone to South America, we turned our sights to 2022. We were going to continue banding the bobolinks, but we added meadowlarks in. And we also wanted to look at the impacts of different management on grassland bird activity and breeding. So as part of the Meadowlark Migratory Connectivity Project, we were one of 12 US sites. We were deploying tags on meadowlarks. This was a program run by the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center. And these are pretty beefy tags for beefy birds with very sharp talons. And Lisa knows that. So these tags, they don't have to pass a tower. They just send the data up to a satellite and then it can be downloaded. And what they were looking for was where's the overlap among these populations? And it was eastern and western meadowlarks. So we were able to, because we were established in the area, we were able to help contribute to this project, and we'll be disbanding them again this year. And we continued with our bobolinks. We deployed 10 tags in 2022, 2 females and 8 males, and we were actually very fortunate to catch 2 of the males from the previous year, and they were in the same home fields that they had been in the year before. And so it was an opportunity to learn more about these individual birds. So our male at Schoolhouse Farm, we'd only gotten local data for him. So in 2022, we had the local data, and then we were actually able to track his migration path. And our buck and doe male, he was really a creature of habit. I mean, when we compared the data from year to year, his local movement was the same, and then his path to South America was also very similar. And again, the Delmarva Peninsula was an important stopover. So 9 of our 10 birds were down there, including the 2 males that we had recaptured. So we are actually looking at possibly working with another partner down there who will be tagging the bobolinks as well. So we'll be able to add in local breeding data along with the migration data, and to inform management in that area. And one of our other exciting moments of 2022 was that we actually got our first international detection. We had 2 detections on the north coast of Colombia, the gateway to South America, where these birds are wintering in Argentina and parts of Uruguay. So that was how the band was working, the tagging was working in. The other piece we had was this looking at the influence of management. We had a student from the University of Pennsylvania, Lee Hart, who was looking at 4 different field types: early mow hay fields, late mow hay fields, row crops, and wheat fields. And we were looking at them over 4 survey periods: late May, early June, late June, and early July, to kind of get snapshots in time to understand how the composition of the field changes throughout the breeding season. So we found 7 species, and the 3 up to the top are focal species for this grassland bird collaboration project. So in doing the surveys, almost all the fields had at least 1 grassland bird species in at least 1 survey. And some of the fields actually had 4 to 5 different species, which that's a pretty diverse field for grassland birds. And the other thing that was kind of gratifying was that probability map that I showed you before. We were able to fill in some sites. So areas where we had expected to see the birds we've actually found them. So it's always nice when theory meets what's on the ground. So looking at the breeding activity of our focal species, bobolinks were only able to breed in the late mow fields. So they had been present in early mow fields and they returned later in the season. But that disturbance in the middle, they weren't able to breed in those fields. And if you look at that map at the top there, those are the 2 sites that we have been looking at for the last 3 years, and they do late mowing in those fields. So we've seen the results of waiting. We can see that these are healthy breeding populations. Later in the season, we see the young birds, we see the density increase. So it's evidence to show that it can work if they're not disrupted. They can have successful breeding. Meadowlarks, these were our surprise birds. They were our most widespread breeder. They bred in the late mow field and in early mow fields. So it's possible the nest placement more along the edge of the field, maybe they're not disrupted during mowing. And the other bird that was sort of a surprise was that our grasshopper sparrows were only breeding in early mow fields. So they nest later than bobolinks and meadowlarks. So it's possible that the mowing occurred early enough that they were able to come back in after the mowing and establish their nest. So what this kind of drives home for us is that we can think about, when we're thinking about the landscape, we can think about also building flexibility into management, because not every field is, if you mow early, it's not that you're totally destroying the possibilities for those fields. And I think having that flexibility gives us an opportunity to work with the farmers in a way that that makes it, I think, easier to find solutions what we're going to do. So what we know is that the grassland birds are breeding in the greater Doe Run area. And if they're breeding there, then that means we have an opportunity to help them breed more successfully in this area. And we also know that the birds are relying on the connectivity of the landscape, and different fields are important at different times. So one of the sites that we have just has never really had a large breeding population, but once the fields around it are mowed, all of the birds are flocking there because they manage with cattle. The grasses are high longer into the season, and so the birds are no longer territorial. You'll see 4 or 5 bobolinks just all hanging on the same blade of grass, and where they're staging and they're given an opportunity to eat. The young birds are doing test flights, and then they leave from there, and our tagging data showed that. So we can think about that also builds flexibility in, and we have to think about providing for these birds throughout the entire cycle of when they're here for the summer. And we also know that species can occupy different fields based on their breeding habitat needs. And the other thing that we've seen is that shifting mowing dates benefits young birds within the year. So we've been in fields from sort of the last week of June to the third week of June to the last week of June, and you can see the difference. You can see the young birds, how much stronger they are with their flight, and so that means that they're going to be able to get out of the way of the mower, and that's really all that they need to do to be able to join the adult birds for migration. And this, of course, can benefit the birds year after year. So we have an opportunity to make the greater Doe Run area a hotspot for grass and bird conservation. So what we're working on now is to establish a conservation working landscape in that 20,000 acre plus hotspot. And so we know that our success is only going to come through collaboration. Everybody has to be invited in to solve this problem. So we need to understand agricultural and economic factors that are related to grassland management, and then we can provide guidance for management based on what we're seeing in the field. So the research is informing what we're telling to the farmers and the landowners, and they're also telling us what they need to do, what their bottom line is. So I've focused a lot on the data and sort of like the hard strengths, but I think it would be a mistake to overlook the importance of the softer side of science. So really what we've come to learn is that the science can inspire and ignite sort of a flame around conservation efforts. And as landowners and farmers learn about the importance of their land for these birds, they start to think about how they can provide for the birds and what part they can play in making sure that these birds persist. So I actually had a landowner tell me that she's happy to share this part of the world with those who love nature. And this was, of course, after she held her first Nevada state. But that really stuck with me because that's really what we're hoping to do, is show the abundance of this part of the world. And it really is a special place. It's the nurturing ground for the enduring cycle of life. And we see this through the changing landscape. We see it in the short stubby grasses in April, setting up the nets to catch our meadowlarks. And then later on the first day of the field season, when we're welcomed by the newly arrived bobolinks, or seeing the wildflowers peeping through the grass, or kneeling down in the wet grass, releasing a restless bobolink back to its mate, or watching a colleague disappear into a sea of grass as she tries to track these birds in the field, or watching a flock of bobolinks form a fluttering cloud above grass that seems to have every color of the rainbow in it, or watching a bobolink perched and practically disappear into a wheat-colored sea, or walking through the fields a few days before it's about to be mowed and seeing young birds take strong and steady flights and knowing that the breeding cycle is complete. So each of these moments in time is like a puzzle piece, filling in the gaps to complete the cycle. And they're each linked and they're each necessary. And we really need to be thinking about those links among the people and the birds and the landscape as we try to solve these conservation problems. So these two pictures is sort of what it's really all about. So they're symbolic of the connections around the land and possibility of having agriculture and bird. So on the left is the we see the agricultural productivity of the land, which is really the reason why that area has been able to hold off the pressure of development. And then we see the bird that's using this working landscape. And so the grassland collaboration is really, we're hoping to be the bridge between the two, to work in partnership to develop a land conservation ethic. that benefits all those who love and use the land. Thank you.
Maybe one question? Public landowners to have the availability to set the right. What would you recommend based on your findings, just the examples, like we need to build it later in life, where you're make sure that there's all that thing.
Yeah, I think, sort of think about 4th of July as being a good time. In this area, they're doing mulch hay. So they don't need high quality hay for forest fodder. So some of it depends on what the hay is used for. So that mulch hay can be taken off later, and it actually is beneficial to have that because it allows the hay to develop. So yeah, if you think about sort of 4th of July, 15th of July, something like that. If you're not, it depends on what you're using the hay for and what you need to get from it.
Thank you so much. And Cailin Fox, who was on the Manning Station, was a PhD student, lectured at Kean University, and was one of our newest council members for EBBA. I'm just telling us about about turning the effect of traumatic resident. So I got my registration in passion using
Hi, I'm very loud, so I'm not using the microphone. Thank you for that introduction. So I will skip to introducing myself. So most of you in this room probably already know that window strikes are one of the worst direct killers of birds on the planet. Potentially up to 1 billion with a B birds a year die due to hitting glass of some variety. All glass is potentially problematic. Mirrored glass is a lot worse since it just reflects habitat. Urban areas have gotten a tremendous amount of attention and a tremendous amount of the study for this over time. But we do now know that both suburban and rural areas are also super problematic and probably responsible for about the same amount of deaths as the urban areas are. Some avian families are well known to be affected more than others. Warblers, thrushes, sparrows are some of the big ones that get more affected. And there are many ways to prevent this. I mean, you got feather friendly over there, so like other people can talk to you about some of that. But that image is just one building in an urban area in one day, and that's not even the scope of what had died in this place. It's a really, really big issue to worry about. So I got this idea for a study because I have a background as a wildlife rehabilitator before I was a bander. So I've been a rehabber for about 20 years, and I worked at the biggest bird rehab center in New Jersey called the Raptor Trust for many years. And we had a guy that lived in Newark. Newark is basically our big urban area in New Jersey. We don't have New York City or Philly, we have Newark, that's kind of ours. And he worked near our bird rehab center. And he just started bringing us in like bags full of birds. And we just noticed very quickly, like, what's happening here? Like, this seems like a trend. And he's like, yeah, this is a big thing in Newark. There's nobody really looking into this. But we have like a ton of these birds are just hitting these buildings. We as rehabbers weren't really studying anything with this at the time. We kind of wandered off on New Jersey Audubon, and they started a big study, Nellie Sikora and some people that she had working with her. I worked at a couple of universities. I was at Ramapo College, which is in northern New Jersey. Lots of mirrored glass on that campus. So I had my own study site. I had birds from the Newark site that were coming to the Raptor Trust that I had access to. And I'm also a bander, so I have potential control birds that have not windows that I can look at and kind of compare these two. I'm also a PhD candidate, so I needed a dissertation, and here we are. Why study the fate of the window-struck birds? Currently, that are not dead, but still live ones, are not currently counted in estimates for like, we see a billion birds a year. Some are hitting windows and not dying, and we're not counting those as ones that are being potentially negatively affected. A few of them that are hitting windows and surviving. So there's a lot of things that can be going wrong with these birds. The big issue when they're first struck, like in this bird right there, they have traumatic brain injury. They have bleeding potentially in the brain. And something that's very well studied in humans, let's say, we know concussions and like traumatic brain injury from football players cause all sorts of psychological issues and issues with memory and spatial skills and all this. So could that be happening with birds? Maybe they can't orient or navigate properly. So if they're need to migrate and they can't do that because their is messed up, they're going to die. And even though they're not dying that second when they're hitting a window, they might be dying later. They also might be injuring their eye. I mean, they're running into glass face first. Their retina is where they're picking up like magnetic cues to be able to see the magnetic field. So they could be damaging their retina, again, not being able to migrate. So maybe the problem's underestimated, and all these birds that are hitting and not dying immediately also need to be counted in this total. So in terms of what you see when you have a bird hitting a window but not dying, that's pretty typical presentation there. They look kind of fluffy puppy, their eyes are closed, their wings or head might be held at a strange area. It's kind of classic head trauma look there. They will not move when you approach them. Sometimes a bird looking like that is actually, fine in quotes, like can fly away within several hours. Sometimes they seemingly recover quite quickly. Sometimes it could be rehab for months on end. Kind of just depends on the severity. In terms of rehabbing these birds, a lot of what we're doing is just supportive care. A lot of it is just keeping them safe from predators. Being around the Newark site, for example, I've seen gulls literally just wait for these birds. They sit on top of buildings. Second a bird hits, it'll still be alive. A gull will come down, swoop it up, and eat it. So a lot of the rehab is just keep you safe. A lot of it is feeding them. So a bird like that obviously cannot forage. You're just putting food in front of them. Sometimes they can't eat at all. So tube feeding, providing fluids, anti-inflammatories to help with brain swelling, like Metacam and things like that. So it's really just supportive care. Obviously, if there's a fracture or something, you can handle that as well. Anyway, I hypothesized that the birds that were hitting those and sensibly recovering. So if you're a rehabber, once it's flighted, once it can feed itself or it's recovered, we can let it go now. I figured those birds that hit windows would have some sort of aberrant migration or would not be completing their migration in the same way. And potentially, second hypothesis, if they took a longer recovery, meaning they had a worse injury to their brain, something that maybe took 3 or 4 months in rehab before they can even figure out how to feed themselves again, that those would sort of be the worst of all. And if those hypotheses were true, we would have to include those in the mortality estimates. And that's important because anyone that's ever tried to work to mitigate any of these windows, it's a very expensive thing. And a lot of places don't necessarily want to get involved in the expense of all that. So maybe if we could even see that are being injured and we have this evidence, maybe there will be more laws in place where you have to mitigate glass and all of this sort of thing. That's the hope anyway. So that's just a picture of my one study site with the mirrored glass. You are actually looking at the glass there. That's reflecting the habitat. So understandably, I would just think that's somewhere to fly towards. But what I decided to do was to use Modus to tag a bunch of birds, which we'll get into. But I really wanted to pair them location-wise. So I have 2 banding stations, one that's urban and one that's sort of rural. And then I had these 2 strike sites, one that is a city and one that this is in a rural campus area. And so I was pairing birds that were at both of these sites. And I looked through my historic data before I started this to try to see which species I could reliably expect to get at both of those sites in appreciable numbers that I could stick a bunch of tags. And then so these yellow rumps, yellow palms, northern water thrush, song sparrow, green platform. Those were who I had enough of at all of these sites to deal with. And then I have these guys later at one of the sites, but didn't do any of that yet. Here's some images of the Newark site. So again, it's that mirrored glass, though in urban areas, a lot of them are hitting overnight as well, just when they're kind of migrating through. There are a couple of pictures of my urban Saltmarsh station where I do most of my banding. A couple pictures of my more rural area. Oh, that's just forested woodland and edge habitat on a satellite campus for the university I work at. I think I can skip the slide on what Modus is. We've all entire time now. But I showed a picture for any of you that are super familiar with where the Modus receivers are. My neck of the woods, like in New Jersey, especially from this view, looks very well represented, and it because we get a lot of detections up by us. But one thing that I certainly noticed during this study was that huge portions of Virginia and North Carolina are uncovered. Kind of miss a lot of what's going on with some of these birds. Willistown, and it looks like they're about to handle this, so we will chat about that later. Very exciting. Okay, that'll me. Zoomed in to show you that there's maybe not as many as it looks like from this picture. There. So we are getting there. My station, both of the two stations have towers. So in New York City, where it says new, so that's my Meadowland station. And if you go up to the three across the top of New Jersey, the middle one is my rural site, just to show kind of where we're at. If you care about tag specs, feel free to look at this. If not, don't worry. I got tags for warblers, for song sparrows, and for catbirds. I folded these two because I wound up not working with warblers. They were just little and freaking me out. I'll do it this year. But so for a bunch of song sparrow tags, I put out a bunch of catbird tags. So we decided to work with. We had good numbers of both. Tag is actually not my bird, but it's a great picture that uses kind of exactly how I do it. It was whoever was in the thing this morning. That's what I'm doing too. Just the leg loop harness. Use 0.5 millimeter jewelry elastic. It's a little bit different than what they had out there. Pretty much what we're going for. I am a very cautious person, rather very anxious person. So I was erring on the side of experienced migrants. Basically adult birds that had already made that migration. I did not want to overburden hatchier birds who were inexperienced and have all their own issues and die like crazy anyway. So just for hatchier birds. They also erred on the side of bigger birds, so that the tag was less of a weight burden on them and using good fat content. So I just felt better about this. I tested them all before release. Some birds literally just won't fly. If you put a tag on them, they're not interested, so you would want to take it off of them. This did, however, how many birds I thought I would have, because I was so stringent in like who I would accept into the study that as many as I would have liked. So over 2 falls, I only did fall migration. Over 2 falls in 2021 and 2022, we got 28 tags out on catbirds and 22 out on song sparrows. Only 6 from each group were window strikes. You know, again, I think I need to be a little less stringent with my requirements in the future, but this is a pilot study, so I feel okay about this. We're getting there. We're getting there. I'm so happy with my detections, especially of catbirds. So I had 25 of them were successfully tracked pretty well. And sparrows not as much, but I realized a little late in the study that by the time the song sparrows are getting to New Jersey, they potentially have completed the majority of their southern migration. So they would move into like South Jersey or Delaware, Maryland. I found this out in part because, and this happened to somebody else. I heard this in another talk where somebody reported a bird that their cat had killed up in Maine in a summer. So I was like, okay, fair enough. So they're already completing their southern migration. So I'm rethinking the song sparrows going forward. But anyway, so our results, there's no difference between the control and experimental birds. I have a lot of cool other migration stuff I figured out that's kind of unrelated to this talk. And I have a poster about that stuff if you care. So feel free to do a presentation and I'll talk about that. In terms of the study, I just pulled 2 paired birds. So these birds were tagged on the same day in those paired locations. So these were 2 of my urban catbirds. So here you have a bird and there's a window struck bird. Typically similar things. They wound up hitting the same receiver in South Carolina on the same date. Because birds wait for good conditions, migrate, they don't sit there until the wind is right and everything is right. On the same day, they went to roughly the same place. So okay. Same story with sparrows. These were tagged in the same date, in the same kind of paired location that are very close to each other. And they different routes. Exactly the same receiver on the same date. So again, doing the exact same thing, So, for once, I'm actually thrilled to be like, my hypotheses were terrible and they're rejected. That's true. I'm happy with that. But as a rehabber, I don't want dead birds, right? So like, I'm fine with it. So yeah, potentially they're acting normally. We think they are actually recovered. Actually, they actually really are, but they actually have recovered as rehabbers. And that has always kind of been the rehabber paradigm. Like if you call up a rehabber and you say like, oh, a bird hit my window, like, what do? They're going to tell you, put it in a box, leave it alone for a few hours, somewhere dark and quiet, open the box. If it flies away, you're good. I recently saw on social media a couple of like well-known groups who shall remain unnamed, but they're big groups that work on window strike stuff, like explaining how they would run after birds for like 15-20 minutes if they saw it hit a window just so they could get it to a rehabber. I'm like, do you think we're performing emergency brain surgery? Like, we're not doing that. And you're stressing them out more. And frankly, rehab itself is very stressful on birds. We don't want the bird in rehab. Some species like accipiters, brown creepers, they just die in rehab anyway because their cortisol levels go way up. They can't deal with it. It's like, of course, hey, if the bird can fly, get it out. Like it's okay, which is super awesome. Have a lot more to deploy. I will get them on the warblers that I said I would. That is this year's project. It's work on the warblers. We actually have a lot of Savannah sparrows as well. So I think I'm going to probably swap over some of the song sparrows to the savannas because they're a species of conservation concern in New Jersey. And our Saltmarsh just happens to be one of the places they come through like crazy. So that would be nice. And I might switch to spring migration for some things. I'm waiting on permission from the banding. So we'll get that. But white-throated sparrows are known as a super collider. They're like really, yes, tons of them hit, like insane amounts, and we have tons of them in rehab. And if I banded in the spring, I do, but I haven't been tagging in the spring, we would get a lot of them. And we follow their northern migration. So I'm excited for that. And anything I've ever done with Modus is the result of talking to people from every organization up there, probably way more than they ever wanted to talk to me. But thank you so much because seriously, I was useless before you guys. So, quick button.
We're just like, I don't know. If you're locally or within your area, but like what ratio of young birds versus adult birds?
Yeah, I mean, it completely depends on the time of year for sure. I think a lot of it is just a fact of like, there's more hatchier birds, you have more young, they don't all come back in the spring. So I think the ratio is just because of that. It seems like the bigger differences are in species and in whether they are experienced with the area or not. So like the migratory birds that are not familiar with these buildings hit like crazy. The resident birds know the buildings are there and they're good. And I haven't seen anything that really shows the younger ones are hitting more than the adults. I will say robins in the summer on my window strike site, so many of the fledglings from that year are all hitting, and we rarely get adults. But again, fledglings are going to outnumber adults 5-to-1. So it's hard to say, but I don't think there's a difference really. From what I've seen,
you see if there's also like a long-term brain injury, like
sure.
crazy.
I know. I would love to know that too.
Injury, like that. A lot of younger infection.
That's great. That's actually really interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to use a microphone, but if you don't hear me well, just let me know and I can grab it. And why I'm here? Well, first, I'm really stoked to be here with you. I mean, really, thank you for the invite to EBBA. And I just love to see so much going on, great science, all this going on. So it's really, really good for me. So I'm here because, as yearly basis, we try to give you an update of what's happening in the BBL. And I know not everyone is a master bander, so not everyone has the huge task of organizing all the bands and getting permits, authorizations, all that stuff. But even if you are not involved on the master permit tasks, it's good that you kind of know what's happening. Yeah. So, like I said, these are updates. One of the things that I'm changing drastically is that we used to give like a very brief over the surface update of what is happening, and provide a lot of ideas and things like that. So right now, I'm trying to give you a straightforward update of what is happening today, and what is really accomplished, and that will all together is going to kind of give you an idea of the vision that we have for the future of the BBL. So first update I'm giving you is personnel. I mean, we've been doing that. Just in the last year, we had 3 new employees, 2 permanent employees. We are really raising the bar of like the capacity of the people we are hiring, because in the past we only had the opportunity to hire really lower level positions that paid very little, and it was very difficult to find someone. So now we're getting to these masters, people with a lot of capacity and very flexible to do better work. So we had just in the last year 2 permanent positions, PhD masters. We got a Oracle administration. We only had in the past only 1 programmer, and that person, Rita, needed to do everything. So now she has a backup, which is a database administrator, and is really right there doing all the updates, all that stuff. We moved 1 contractor. So we've been hanging with contractors for like 15 years. So there are contractors who were 12 years already with us. And it's terrible, it's nothing like being a permanent position, right? So we've been basically moving all the contractors to be permanent positions, or at least term positions, but within the government, which is a really great improvement. It's been improving our whole environment within the lab, because more stability, everybody is really into that. And so Nick was the STEPO program. I think you are familiar with the STEPO program, I hope. It's a program that in the federal government, which allows students with some type of disabilities. Most of them are people within the spectrum, and the federal government put together this plan where basically you train them over years to do specific tasks, and when they graduate out of the program, we hope that somebody in the federal government hires them in permanent positions. Great program. So we were able to hire contractors to contractors. Now there are 2 permanents. We have 2, Nick and Kevin, who are amazing. And people within the spectrum, they are amazing. They're geniuses most of the time. So we have 2 people focusing on the data digitization of the historical records. We still have millions of records before 1960 that need to be incorporated into our database. Of course, the data that is being recaptures, we basically had someone going back to find the data, bring it to the data. So it's digitized. So there still have like millions of records there that we need to be incorporated. So Nick and Kevin are just working with the archive and doing an amazing job. I think last year we published that they already sent 1 million data reports for us. So it's like they're doing great. And Jen McKay, probably Jen McKay. She's been a contractor for 10 years. Finally on board as a federal. It's great, and we still have 1 contractor to go. So hopefully, she wants to be a part of the BBL as a permanent position. So personally, we've been doing really well last year. This is the team, the whole team right now. Pretty much the counter people, bandit people, you are familiar with some of them. We have interns now. Mary Woodrow from Indiana University, PhD candidate. She's doing a bunch of analysis in our database. We have volunteers for our vending station, at least 2 that are like very consistent now, and we're going to be growing all that basic volunteers. But in general, this is pretty much the team. I don't know. Yeah, this is pretty much the team. Danny Weissberg, he retired. Of course, he loves birds and vending, so he's there all the time with us. So he's an interest, and he goes to the meetings. He's there, and it's perfect because he has so much information in his brain that when we the problem, okay, then we need you, and then he comes with the answer. So, but he's there, and but yeah, that's pretty much the group is growing. We are, I think, 15 and plus 2 minus 2, so that's pretty much. So it's growing. So we're doing well in that sense. Database by numbers. I always show these numbers. Of course, you can see it's growing. One interesting thing here is that it's clear that you guys are doing really good job in terms of engaging more and more in growing the base of urban. So this number used to be 1 million. In the last few years, it moved to 1.2 million bands that we distribute. Now it's 1.4, and it's just going soon. Definitely, there's a lot more banding happening. This one was like 8,000 for many years, really for many years. Now we're doing this, and I think we're going to go to probably 150K a year soon. So things are happening. So it's great to see that because not just for the sake of the data, but also it reflects that people is being engaged in the society, the community is just there, right? So it's good. These numbers, I mean, I'm just presenting this as just to get an update, but really these numbers are changing all the time. Think about it, a master bander, sometimes they get requests to be, oh, I want to inactivate my permit for a while because I'm not going to be doing much, and then later activate again. So the fact that we have active permits here doesn't mean that they're gone. So that means there's people coming back. So in the US, we have about 428 right now. In Canada, 1189. You know, we work in collaboration with Canada, the bird banding office, and we hold the database, so we manage a lot of data and provide bands to Canada also. So that's pretty much what is happening right now. Priorities, priorities for today. So we've been working really hard every single day on this. So what I'm showing you is really accomplishments because they are almost done or done. So we ensure first, of course, the most basic things to ensure that all the federal responsibilities that we need to do keep up with the day-to-day activities, right? Availability of bands. You remember we had even some years where everybody was like, "Oh, we don't have enough." No, number one, we have enough bands for everyone. Whatever you need, we will get that. So that's really important for everyone. Shorter time span. We're really working hard, restructuring all the permitting workflow, basically all the work processes to ensure that you get what you want. Really. We are reviewing everything. I mean, we really had because we didn't have enough people. We didn't have like updated websites. We didn't have updated documents. I mean, there was really a little bit of a mess. So we are trying to go that right now. We are reviewing. We are really reviewing the website. You see our communications emails are just now being modified. Letters to banders are more often, MTABs, note to banders, I mean, all that information. Spend a lot of time with news items and basically the communication part. We know that both communication and transparency from the BDL is very important for you. So we are working on that. And of course, all the work process of data management are changing radically because many things that you will see later, but it really allows us to be more efficient in the lab with the data. Well, you know that improve communication with vendors. There's a lot of stuff going on. I hope you had a chance to see memo to all vendors. So far, from what we can see in the BDL, of course, we are not there and we are not with you all the time. But I think this is the last one, maybe. This is the last one. And so, looking at the statistics in our website and interactions with the users or likes, I think in 2 days we had 1,100 viewers that stay for 8 minutes on it. So that means people is reading that and it's connected with those MTABs. So you remember in the MTAB at the end, it says, please, if you have something to say, to communicate, you need something, there's a special request, whatever, let us know, we will put it there in the MTAB. And this is digital, this is in the vendor portal, and well, some of you are distributing into social media, so that's it. Review and regulations, this is a task that we've been talking about for like only 15 years in the BDL. It's really all what we have. So we are really going back and working with Youth Fish and Wildlife Service Permit Office, and we are really coordinating, working together, because you know this goes into lawyers, and that's a lot going on when you get into code of federal regulations. The big process was one of the new hires, Stephanie. She was working with the federal permit for many years with NOAA. So now we stole her from NOAA, and now she's helping us on the permit stuff. So we are really doing a lot there. So probably in the next couple of years, you will see. Did you know this Code of Federal Regulations changes, it takes years, that's the way it is. But we're doing it, so we are reviewing everything. I mean, what it really says, what are the federal responsibilities for you, and what needs to be changed. So that's really one big project that we have, and it's happening now. We use Fish and Wildlife Service every 2 months with new drafts and new stuff. So we're moving forward. I mentioned this about Nick and Kevin. This is a group of separate program. So there are a lot, but the two are the ones that are high. And that's what they do basically all the time. They're so fun to work with them. They are super smart, and they are just scanning and digitizing, archiving everything. Really, really good. Elaine, if you know Elaine, she's kind of supervising how they work with them, because they need sometimes really more help and just let them do everything. But they're great. Database releases. You've seen we have more ways to get the data from us. There's the Bandit portal, who does automatic stuff. You can go to the portal and say, I want chickadees, I want from this year to this year. You click and automatically you get the data right away. You can also do it size-based. So now if you're more like into data and you want like big data sets, you have your R code, or you want to go into GBIF, or whatever you want to do, more like fancy way of doing things. You go to science-based and drag the whole thing into your data set. So it's more available, and we are working on 2 more ways to distribute data. We want to be in we're formatting for Darwin Core, which is basically a way to being able to distribute it to large data banks who need the data, or through APIs. So it's going to be much better. Bandit portal, you know that this happened. I think in the last EBBA meeting, we were talking about ideas. Oh, we are going to show you how to do it. Well, we did it. So it took 6 months of crazy work plus like a year of planning, and it's there now. You can see it. It's far from perfect, but something that you don't see is that we are in the back end doing updates, cleaning, fixing bugs, receiving any comment from you just to make sure this is better. And yes, it doesn't have all the features that we envision, but we're working on them. Little by little, they're moving forward. So the master vendors, for those who are not master vendors, and luckily you don't have to deal with data and submission of data. Now there's a portal that. So this portal is going to be the way to connect to us, and you're going to find everything, just like you do your doctor appointments or bank, whatever. You're going to go to the portal, and everything is going to be there for you. So yeah, this is working, and I heard good comments. So I think at least more people is happy than unhappy. So that works. It's working. And we're doing live demos. We have office hours. We have live demos. We have office hours now. So you can go to the website and say, oh, I have a problem, and I really want to talk one-to-one with someone to help me and do this. You figure out what are the office hours, schedule your hour, and then you have someone virtually working with you. So that's really being successful. Of course, we're working on video tutorials. That takes a lot of time. So we had to be vendors and scientists and video editors and communication people. We are everything, right? So it takes time for us to do the video tutorials, but they're growing. I think right now there are 3 just in the last 3 months. And every month, I think we're going to come up with one more. And hopefully it's easy for you. And maybe you don't need the office hours. You go to quick live demo and figure out how to do it. Of course, this is a big one. We are really, really conscious that banding stations are the best outdoor classrooms, and it has different meanings for everyone, but it's really valuable for everyone. We know that, and your community is exactly the one who knows, right? So I don't have much to say. So we are really making a big step on our banding station. So we have this website of our banding station. It's only cryptic, really, because we've been there for this fall migration is going to be our 40th year of our banding station. Nobody knows about it. So crazy. Of course, we are in a restricted area, toxin, so not everybody can go in, but still, it's like we never got, and we still had a little table with a little tiny room in the middle of the woods, and it was like it's great, but if we really want to learn and think about how to connect with public and with people around and all that stuff, we need to have the infrastructure to do it. So because of that, we are now improving all. We're having by this fall our new vending station, big gazebo to do outdoor, indoor stuff. This is going to happen by, well, I guess it has to happen by August 1st. Oh, so we are doing that, and we've been able to basically tell everyone, beg everyone, and figure out, okay, we need help. So yeah, we are basically building, and we have so many resources already there that nobody was really connecting. We have apartments, we have a big research center, the Coast and Wildlife Research Center, we have auditoriums, we have research centers, and we have many more current projects working at a daily basis. Like we have 120 person doctors there for ecology studies. We have diving dog pools. We have everything within our center. So perfect to have a vending station and make the tour to them. And we already tested a lot of things. So I invited a lot of congressmen, staff from Congress, directors, all the science directors of USGS, National Wildlife Service people. I mean, everyone, ambassadors, everyone, just come and see. So I give them a tour and show them all what we have, and they're like, we love it. So USGS is sending all these ideas of, wow, that's great that you're doing that. Yeah, what do you need? So that's it's really helping us to be out there, to be exposed to them. So we're doing so much, and yeah, they are responding to that. So priorities, of course, we need to be involved in collaborative research and actually doing research. For 100 years, we've been pretty much operational programs. You know, for operational program, we have our day-to-day responsibility based on the federal regulations, give the bands, do this, do that, you know, that's all our work. And it was, but as you know, nowadays, with all these economic issues and dynamic world that we have, it's very difficult to maintain a program that doesn't bring in funding, that doesn't show its value easily. It's very difficult, and that's why museums are disappearing. That's why in academia, for instance, the naturalists are disappearing. Because why? We have the pressure of publishing, bringing funding. You know, I understand that's happening, but so it's been really a very challenge for a long-term program to maintain, not just to maintain, but to move forward properly. So because of that, we're trying to be a lot more dynamic in all different ways, and involving collaborative research. We have our research center in Patuxent now, Patuxent Research Refuge, but now we are Ecological Science Center, yeah, Eastern Ecological Science Center. So we are 170 people. 80% of them are DE certificates. We have like all the brain power there to being able to do that. So now we are really engaging into research, and we know that instead of begging, because if you beg, they say, well, I don't have funding, because you know how funding works. Usually takes like 5 years. So from we start talking, you get the study, finally the collaboration really sets into a proposal, somebody puts the budget, and then later, finally, if it gets granted, then 2 years after you get the funding, right? So it's like whatever you are spending today, it was built 5 years ago. So, well, let's think about that. So now we are engaging in a lot of research on actually what we have the capacity to do the science, to write the proposals, to be part of the budget of that proposal, you know, those grants. So we are aiming for all that, and it's working fine. We are involved already in a bunch of research. But to do that, one thing that is very important is to say, okay, we're a long-term program, 102 years, great. We are the ones who know the value, but still, you need hard data to really communicate that value. So we are doing a lot of analysis. We're diving into looking at all what is being published, not only in peer-reviewed journals, but also in great literature. And there are now very clever analysis that you can do. Like this is an example of bibliometric analysis. The quantitative analysis that with statistics, you analyze all that data and you show the trends of like what is the impact that you have in science? What are the topics of interest? It's a different time. This is just a graph of just the last 5 years. And I plot all the studies related to bird banding, and this is what it's showing me. Dispersal and migration and habitat associations. I mean, until you analyze all that, you start realizing where are we going as a community. Everybody's into that right now. But when you look at 5-year periods back, things are changing. So you see all these dynamic needs of the people and how the data is telling you the patterns, right? So understanding those patterns, understanding what are we doing today, what we did before, it can allow us to plan very strategically what's next or where to put all the resources. That's pretty much where we're. So we have a bunch of we're always looking for volunteers from master's, PhD students, undergrad, whatever to help us on this. So Anna was been just doing search of everything. She's putting a message, all the data from all the publications that relate to bird banding just to show, just to format everything. So our statisticians can dig in to really show what are the patterns in the data. So we can get these three. These three are like super key for us to think strategically. What are the scientific impacts that we're doing? So where are we going to be selling our disciplinary patterns and identify the users and users? You can identify who are the major players, what should be the first collaborators. I mean, you can think a lot just by thinking about these things. So this is just an example, right? It's keyword occurrence. You just quickly, all the data shows you what matters, right? So this is just an example. But like this, bibliometric analysis shows you like hundreds of visualizations of the data and allows you to think. Another thing that is super important because we, like I said, we always, bird observatories, we know the value of what we do. The people doesn't know, or our leaders sometimes don't know about it. So we're doing a socioeconomic analysis on the value of bird banding and the BBL, basically both. So basically, I'm working with the Science and Decision Center, bunch of economists who, it's impressive. We have a totally different language, totally different analytical approaches, very different ways of seeing things, but that's exactly what we need to understand what is our value, because maybe our value in the society is as strong as our value on this. So there are other, we need to think outside the box basically and really understand these values that are out there. So you can use the word here, monetize. Don't get scared. It's not that we're going to be selling stuff, but it's mostly to understand really our value. Is it the 20 or the 30? Okay, yeah, great. Lots of research, just quick examples. Just to project Migratory Bird Explorer from Audubon that has all the banding data. I hope you can see it. This is Smithsonian Atlas that is coming out. All these are big projects using all the bird banding data. So I think that's a good way for us to show how all these little pockets of banding stations all together can help a lot. Window collisions, and I like your presentation. We're doing a lot now with window collisions. Imagine we receive 150,000 reports. So we find out that we have a lot of reports of bird collisions that are banned, birds banned. So we are analyzing that. The patterns are like so unique, and we are working on that. We have Andrew Royal, our statistician, and just digging into the data, and we're going to be modeling a lot of that. I can tell you more about that if you want. Lots of collaboration. It's very key that we talk with our USDA, USGS, all the Department of Interior, and work together towards this. They think very differently than us, but we need to work together. So I think that has been improving a lot. Priorities, of course, we are attending all the meetings now. We got funding, so little by little, we're going to be expanding. So I think we need to be out there, not just presenting, but really talking with the people and being able to communicate better in the community. International collaborations, the Ecological Committee, we've been attending these. The funny thing is that we've been attending this meeting, always talking about the North American aspect. And it seems like every year we've been doing the same. And it's like, no, we really need to figure out what are we going to be doing. We're not going to be just copy and pasting things, right? We need to do that. So we are really preparing, and we are discussing now how we're going to do an strategic plan for the BBL and the whole North American Beer Banking Program, which is along with the Beer Banking Office in Canada, and basically put together economic aspects, social aspects. Think about it. We've been having strategic plans, and many have strategic plans, and they don't think that how come we have strategic plans without business plans? It's not possible, because ultimately ideas are great, but you need to figure out how to achieve those. So we are really coming up with a new way of doing a strategic plan, a more comprehensive way, where we have a board, where we have board like you could be part of the board, all that stuff, where we are all together working towards a vision that is combined with all government. Banners Without Borders, you've probably seen some of these. We just finished phase 1, met with 15 countries. Everybody loves all what we're doing. We love what they are doing. We are like this now with all our 15 countries, and we are keep expanding. Phase 2, we're going to start meeting in opening those meetings for all the vendors. So you want to know what is happening in New Zealand, in Australia, in Japan, everywhere. And that is going to change, because it's going to move beer banking science in a totally different direction. Those are the goals: improve communication, foster learning, collaboration, develop partnerships, and advance science. It's really picking up well. And now I have calls from like international programs in the federal government, all the stuff like, what are you doing? Move quickly, because we're moving fast. So, the ultimate goal, and it's crazy, this 2 years ago, I was telling you that we had all these issues, all database, all technology, all that stuff. It's over. By the end of this year, we're going to have completely new database. We're moving from Oracle to SQL. Now we're doing it right now. So all the systems are now connected there. We're going to be using this right now. So we are also moving this system into Arrow's data center. This is where the Landsat data is hosted. So now we had like our basement with like one IT or two IT people doing this decades ago. That's not right. So now we're going to be in a data center with mirrors everywhere on the cloud. We're going to be able to do APIs, connect with any other database. We're going to be able to do data mining approaches. We're going to be able to do AI, artificial intelligence. There's so many things you can do in a top of the line data center. I mean, if we're holding imagery for NASA and all that stuff in USGS, we can do better with Urban. So we have the capacity to have all the government right there, and this is happening. So, and the last one, this is basically the vision, like BBL permitting. That's what we do day to day. But all those goes around are part of the BBL. So the big change is that we're not an operational program anymore. We are now an integrated science program that still supports all the collection, handling, management, and generation of data, but also about urban science to all these things. So we will see little by little the next year. I'm going to do like this, but with totally different new accomplishments, and it's going to be really, really good. We'll see. Well, I didn't mention this. This never happened in the BBL. So,
Meeting for a long time.